From somewhere in Mitzvah Yericho, this is the Levi Chazan Show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Levi Chazan. Shalom. Welcome back to our Parsha Shavua. Many of you complained last week that the lighting was off. We hope that we've taken appropriate measures to fix that problem for your viewing pleasure. In this week's Parsha Ki-Teitzei, the Parsha is packed with many, many commandments. In fact, we find 74 commandments in this week. If you do the math, that comes out to 12% of the entire mitzvot, commandments in the Torah. Many of them deal with social issues. The Torah tells us that we have to look out for our fellow man. In the words of Reb Shlomo, the greatest thing you could do for someone is to do somebody a favor. And that comes to mind in this week's Parsha. Not taking interest, loaning money to your fellow man, hearing the cries of the orphans and the widows, and when you take collateral from a poor person, make sure he gets it back. Gifts to the poor. One of the interesting aspects of this Parsha is that we deal with a house that has a roof, and we are commanded to place a railing around it. So God forbid nobody should fall off. There should be no accidents. The Netziv, commentator on the Torah, asks the question, wouldn't it have been better for the Torah to command us to put up a mezuzah instead of a railing? We don't have that command. The command is to put up a railing. What about the mezuzah? The mezuzah spiritually protects the house. Here the Torah is teaching us. You got to be on the practical level. When you're talking about commandments and loving your fellow man, make sure there's a railing up there. Mezuzah could come later. Don't worry about that. But you can't live in the house if it's dangerous for your fellow man. That's what I'm talking about. So we have these beautiful commandments, social issues, which interact to make sure that your brother is there and you're given your helping hand to make sure that he's with you. One commandment that we find in this week is Ken Sipur, sending out the mother bird. This seems to be a very compassionate mitzvah. We send out the mother bird when we want to take the eggs or the young birds, making sure that she doesn't see it. But actually, the rabbis of old told us that anyone who says that this is a compassionate mitzvah, we shut him up. Now, why is that? It seems to be very compassionable to the mother bird that she shouldn't be around when you take the eggs. But the truth is that all the commandments, no matter in our eyes, they may seem compassionable. They might seem that it's the right way to go. It's a good thing to do. But you should all know that the bottom line is that they're commandments. Now, even though the best thing you could do is to do somebody a favor, that's the greatest thing you could do, but it's got to come from the point of that it's coming from the Lord. Because we know societies cannot exist if everyone's going on their own understanding, on their own ways. This is a good thing, and this looks fine in my eyes, and this looks bad in my eyes, so I won't do that, and this I'll do. And everyone has their own understanding, everyone with his own truth. But then it all gets mixed up. I mean, just look around the world today. In societies, this is looting, and this is stealing, this one's murder, and it's all over the place, and societies are falling apart. From Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia to New York, L.A., and London. It's all coming apart at the seams. But when it comes from the point that this is the law given by God, and so no matter what we understand, if it's compassionable or not, if it looks good in our eyes or not, if it's merciful in our eyes or not, it doesn't make a difference. We got to do it because God said for us to do it. And that's the way society could continue on. That has to be the bottom line. Even in these social commandments that we find in this week's Parsha. Because the greatest thing you could do is to do somebody a favor. And especially when it comes from the viewpoint that this is what God wants from you to do. That's why the railing gets up on the house, because this is what God wants you to do. He wants you to take care of your fellow man. So it's interesting that we find at the end of the Parsha, the commandment to go out and fight against Amalek. Now in the commandment of Amalek, as we all know, we have to wipe out the men, the women, and even the children. That's right. It's little baby Amaleks. They're as cute as a button, but they have to be killed also. In fact, we find the first king of Israel, King Saul, had a problem with that. He tried, but he argued with God. He said, if the men sinned, what about the women? And if the women sinned, well, what about the babies? They certainly didn't sin. It just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem the right thing to do. It doesn't seem to be merciful. A voice came out from heaven and said, don't be more righteous than your Maker. If God says to do it, you got to do it, because that's the right thing. So even the social commandments, which we find in abundance in this week's Parsha, have to come from that outlook, that it's being given by God. We do it, we say, hey, this is a great mitzvah, this is so merciful, this is so compassionable, this is great. All of them have to be like that, whether we understand it or not. That's the bottom line over here. So that's it for this week. I'm Levi Chazan, coming to you from somewhere in Mitzvah Yeriko. Until next time, remember, the greatest thing that you could do is to do somebody a favor.